Okay, so meow, we are in the Scirocco, with all the spiders and such. And if we just take off the steering wheel here so we can see, this is stock Scirocco steering wheel, which I won't be using. It's actually quite a nice, cozy place to be, considering, you know, all of the cage around you, which is very sturdy. So right now, well, I mean, you can see the cable shifter box, which is installed again above the floor. It actually makes kind of for a nice position, and then we'll install a short shifter on the other end, so we make up for this long rod. And we can see that, you know, this cable, in order to go to the transmission now, is a little bit longer than it needs to be, so we'll shorten that. Now the Passat harness fits in here pretty well, actually, so the fuse box will be fitting here, and you can see all the heat shrink and the wires and stuff that we don't need. They've already taken care of that. The Passat fuse thing, junction fits here very well. And all these wires actually have been gone through and they are organized. So you can see, like, this is the end of our ignition harness, which is, yeah. So this will be, so how this is all going to work is, we have our, the camera's moving a lot. So we have the steering column here, right? And the steering column has these two bolts. We also have access to these two dash mounts, which I don't know if we'll be keeping, but what I've made is this guy here. Now, how this will work is those two bolts will hold this in, as well as a third one I'll be adding. And if we can hold this here, you'll see the Passat instrument cluster has these two mounting holes in the bottom, right? So the Passat instrument cluster will sit here, and it will attach to those tabs I've welded onto this plate. And then this plate also is going to have these two panels, right? So it's going to have a panel here, which will be for switches and such. And everything above the black one I have access to space-wise for switches and things. And then over here on the left side, we have another panel, which is going to be for lighting. So we'll have, take everything out of here. So we'll have the Passat lighting guy here, which we mounted about right there in that panel, as well as the high beam switch with stock high beams, and then there'll be a switch for all the external lighting. Other things. I don't know if you can see it right now. I'll go through it in more detail later, but you can see that the modifications have been made. God, the sun is so bright. Modifications have been made to the pedal box. So master cylinder now mounts here, and then this whole mounting and everything has been added by me. So, and then the end of the pedal, you can see that change has been made. There was already a groove that the master cylinder fit into. I just added these two plates to help hold it in the groove. So, and then in order to run the master cylinder this far into the car, we'll be using the right-hand drive master cylinder cable, which we're still waiting for. So yeah, the layout for the other side of the dash is going to be basically our ignition switches and starter switch on this side, and we'll add, if I can find it, our cutoff switch right here as well, and then what other switches we need to add. For gauges, you can see I've marked, zoom out, I've marked 3 holes in the bottom of this, so we'll be mounting just typical, like, Summit Racing gauge pod under the right side of this mount that I made, which is all just welding metal that has been welded. So yeah, hopefully when we come back we'll have holes drilled. So we're back in the car now, and you can see that I have replaced the bolts in the steering column with longer ones, and these ones are about 10 millimeters too long, but this is just to demonstrate how this will be mounted. The next step will be to drill a hole here for the third bolt for extra support. In the previous segment, what I did was I added this plate here just to prevent this from bellowing down, since it is quite long and this is just a flat piece of steel. So yeah, we'll be drilling out this hole, and then these two mounts, I think, I'm not sure, spot welded to the unibody are going to go. If I do decide to add any sort of mount on this end just for making this more rigid, I'll make my own instead of adapting to these guys. I think it's pretty good as it is, though. No one's going to be like smashing down on it. Also, we have drilled out these guys. These are mounted on here. And you can see the location for the kill switch on the left, ignition switches on the top, and accessory on the bottom. And then we've added, so this very surprised piece of metal has also been drilled out for the other larger switches. If I stick that switch in there, you'll see how that's going to be mounted. I think it'll work with the roll cage there. I'm not quite sure yet. If not, we'll have to replace it with a smaller switch. But this big switch is so neat. And you see we'll have to notch out this plate as well for the larger switch. So, yeah. Okay, so now I've removed those two brackets that were there for the dash. And those were spot welded in. So you can see one was mounted here. It was also mounted under here. Another one's not mounted here. So for removing these, what I basically like to do is you just take a marker. You can mark the stud welds and take a punch and punch the center, and then that makes them easy to drill out. And as you can see, we had the larger one here, which went like that for the dash, and then you had this one. This one's a little bit harder to remove. It had this tab up here. I just kind of cut it off, and then I threw some primer on it for now and paint it later. So I was getting ready to drill a third hole, and just for experimenting, I put the dash mount above the column and below the this bracing. It actually works quite well. It holds it there fairly good, and it means I can use the stock jam nuts that are in here. And when I have the proper bolts in, that also means this will be able to sit flat. And even when it will do that, it's angled in such a way it actually, well, it works quite well actually. It's quite nice, and I can take the steering wheel here just to show you and put that on. And everything's set up pretty well. This might be angled a little bit differently when it's finally there, but now this steering wheel does come down to my legs quite far. Just testing for left foot braking and such. So, I mean, we'll have a different steering wheel because this one's garbage, but yeah, the splines are actually damaged. I don't know if you can see in the camera, but not really worth fixing. So the suede is now over the aluminum panel. I have a couple of the switches in, so you can see the kill switch is now in. And when these holes are lined up, so that it would be bolted in, this goes in such a way that it's perfectly level because of OCD. I still have to get these bolts, but yeah, that's how that will go in. This is just like another key to the car, I guess. You have to be able to turn that to turn it on. These switches fit in here well, now that I notched these out. And now we can work on the ignition harness. So now we're back in the car, and the dash is mounted. The two screws for the steering column mount are going through the dash bracket and into the mount that's attached to the unibody. The instrument cluster it's just sitting here. I have to get two bolts to mount that, but this is how it will be mounted. As we can see, the switch does in fact clear the roll cage, so we'll have this nice little switch here, and then these two switches for the other lights which will be out front and such. And then over here we have all the other switches and controls that we'll need, and this comes off, and you put this guy on here, and so on, and all the other switches for controlling the car. These will be accessories such as like rear defroster and maybe turn signals and so on. So yeah, it works well. Gotta catch them all.